Thank you for downloading the Rib Shorts PDF pattern. I'm going to walk you through all the steps to achieve this final result. The materials and fabric requirements will be located in the PDF instruction booklet. Start by printing your pattern. It is available in paper sizes A4, US letter, and AO. Grab a ruler and measure the test square. If the measurements are correct, line up the pattern pieces for a better view. There will be one front piece and one back piece. The pattern also has a coloured guide based on the size you'd like to sew. Start cutting out your pattern in your size around the outer edge and place the pieces back together. Some people ask if you need to overlap the paper or cut the tiny white border away, and no, you don't need to cut it away. For some reason, some printers tend to leave a safety gap and not print right next to the edge, but don't worry, it will still line up. Grab your sticky tape and join the pattern pieces together. I'm constantly upgrading my patterns as I learn or see new things, so I would like to reposition the text in the future, but it isn't detrimental to the final product. I have been asked in the past why some of my patterns don't have a grain line, and my answer is that knit patterns don't often use traditional grain lines. That's because they are more focused on the direction the fabrics stretch rather than the weave. In the description of my Etsy listing, I've emphasised that it's important to choose a specific type of rib fabric for your project. Ribbed cuff fabric that you would use on your jumpers simply are not suitable. I'll leave a link for the fabric that I used in the description. It's from a brand called Zack Rabbit Fabrics. The direction of stretch should go from left to right and the rib detail should run vertically. Fold the fabric over horizontally once and place the pattern onto the edge of the fold. You can pin the pattern down to the fabric to be more precise, but I find that paperweights, or basically anything that I can find near me, are suitable for me. Cut both back and front pieces out. Seeing as the front and back pieces are so similar, I like to mark or place a pin on the back while I'm sewing to differentiate between the two. Measure your elastic according to the size chart in the instructions booklet and cut one piece. Place the front and back pieces together with right sides facing and pin them into place along the sides and crotch. If you aren't sure what the right sides facing means, it's basically the pretty side of the fabric, the outside of the fabric, or the side that you want to show when you're wearing the piece. I use an overlocker for the next step, but you can use a regular sewing machine with a zigzag stitch. The seam allowance is located in the instruction booklet, but it means that you will need to stitch right onto the edge of the fabric. If you are using an overlocker, do not cut off any excess fabric. Now go ahead and sew down the two side seams and on the curve of the crotch. Grab your elastic. I'm sure that in other tutorials you've been taught to overlap your elastic and stitch it into place. Forget that. Place the ends of the elastic together and do not overlap them. You will use a wide zigzag stitch to join the ends together. This method is so great because you don't have a bulky part on the seam and it's easier to sew through the elastic. I can't tell you how many times I've snapped needles trying to sew over bulky pieces of elastic. Be sure to sew over the join quite a few times just to secure it. Take the elastic and fold it in half. Pin both ends. Fold it again and place 2 more pins in both ends. This little trick is great for evenly spacing the elastic before attaching it to the shorts and sewing it. If you're a beginner, you can fold the elastic again and place a few more pins. You're going to do the same spacing method on the shorts by folding the waistline and pinning the ends. You're going to line up the pins on the waistline to the pins on the elastic and pin them into the inside of the shorts. It's so important to make sure both pins on elastic and shorts are evenly spaced apart to avoid bunching up or overstretching when you go to sew them in the next steps. When you've pinned it, double check to make sure that the elastic is not twisted. It's a mistake I've made before. Head over to your sewing machine and prepare a base stitch along the very edge of the fabric. A base stitch, also known as a tack stitch, is a long, loose, straight stitch that temporarily holds the elastic into place. Place the elastic and waistband under the presser foot. You'll notice that the elastic is shorter than the fabric. You'll need to pull the elastic to the length of the fabric to fill in the gap between the pins. A mistake a couple of customers have made is that their waistband ended up being loose and wavy. It ended up being that way because they stretched out the fabric as well as the elastic when they were sewing. You only need to stretch the elastic to the length of the fabric. If you've sewn it correctly, it will look like this. I like to go ahead and add my clothing tag or care label to the back of the shorts. If you have any clothing tags, I urge you to do the same. Next, you will fold the elastic down towards the wrong side of the fabric once. You don't need to measure this as you will use the width of the elastic itself as you fold. Pin it into place. Full disclaimer, I use a cover stitch machine to add waistbands or to hem knit fabric, and I know this is not possible for a lot of people. Instead, you will need to use a zigzag stitch to sew the elastic down. Remember that base stitch we did earlier? You can now go ahead and pull it out using your scissors or a needle. It should slide out pretty easily, but if you leave it in place, it won't actually do anything. The last step is to hem your shorts. Fold the hem up towards the inside by 1/2 inch or 1.5 centimeters and pin it into place. I like to iron the hem before sewing it as it looks much cleaner. If you aren't using a cotton fabric, make sure to use a cotton cloth over the top of your fabric so it doesn't melt. Head over to your sewing machine and zigzag the hem into place. Now you're all finished. Here's the final result and what it looks like on my body. I've gone for a size medium. Now, there is actually a matching top that you could make to make this a set, and it's on my Etsy store, and it's called the Everyday Tank Top. I hope you enjoyed sewing these shorts, and have a good day.